The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of New Dakota Colony. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck, watching his soldiers practice with their rifles. The sound of gunfire echoed across the valley as bullets hit their targets. Beside him, Captain Lisa Carter checked her tablet, recording the results of the drill. "Good shooting today," Lisa said. "The new recruits are getting better with the old weapons." Jake nodded. The colony had been using these same rifles for 50 years. They were simple, reliable, and cheap to make. Most other human colonies had switched to laser weapons, but New Dakota preferred the old ways. Bullets never ran out of power, and they worked in any weather. High above the planet, something watched them. Commander Vexstar floated in his observation chamber aboard the Zephyrian scout ship. His 4 eyes focused on the primitive display below. The humans were shooting metal projectiles at paper targets. He had seen children play with more advanced toys. "These creatures still throw pieces of metal at each other," Vexstar spoke into his communication device. His voice carried across space to the Zephyrian home fleet. "They have not even mastered basic energy weapons." On the planet below, the training exercise continued. Soldiers ran through obstacle courses carrying heavy rifles. They crawled through mud, fired from behind concrete walls, and practiced loading bullets into their weapons by hand. It looked exactly like warfare from 1,000 years ago. Jake Morrison had fought in 3 colonial wars. He knew that fancy weapons often broke when you needed them most. Laser guns needed power cells. Plasma rifles overheated in battle. But a good rifle with bullets would fire all day long, even if you dropped it in a river. "Sir," Lisa Carter pointed to her scanner, "I'm getting strange readings from orbit. Something big is up there." Jake looked up at the clear blue sky. He saw nothing, but Lisa's equipment was never wrong. "What kind of readings?" "Unknown energy signature. It's been there for 3 hours, just watching us." The Zephyrian scout ship remained invisible to human sensors. Their cloaking technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had built. Vexstar continued his report to his superiors, describing what he saw as a primitive military exercise. "They use chemical explosives," he reported. "Their vehicles are powered by burning fossil fuels. Their weapons fire solid projectiles using combustion. I estimate their technology level to be at least 2,000 years behind our standards." Back in the command center on New Dakota, General Kyle Brooks received an urgent message from Earth. Strange ships had been detected near several human colonies. All military forces were ordered to high alert. "Jake," Kyle's voice crackled over the radio, "we've got visitors. Unknown ships in multiple systems. I need you to prepare your people." Admiral Morrison gathered his officers in the main briefing room. Maps of the colony covered the walls, showing defensive positions and supply routes. Most of the weapons marked on these maps were simple ones: machine guns, mortar, and artillery pieces that fired explosive shells. "We don't know who they are or what they want," Jake told his team, "but we need to be ready for anything." Captain Lisa Carter studied the defensive plans. "Sir, if they have advanced technology, our weapons might not be effective against them." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But these old weapons have won a lot of battles. Sometimes simple is better than fancy." In space, Vexstar finished his assessment. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for centuries, conquering less advanced species. Humans would be easy to defeat and useful as workers. Their primitive technology posed no threat to Zephyrian energy shields and plasma. Weapons. The scout ship began transmitting its findings to the invasion fleet. Within hours, dozens of Zephyrian warships would arrive to begin the conquest of human space. Their weapons could phase through solid matter, disrupting molecular bonds and turning entire cities to dust. Their shields could deflect any energy weapon ever built. On New Dakota, the soldiers finished their training. They cleaned their rifles, counted their ammunition, and prepared for another ordinary day. None of them knew that alien eyes had been watching them, judging their weapons to be worthless antiques. Jake Morrison stood alone on the observation deck as the sun set. His rifle hung at his side, the same model he had carried for 20 years. It was scratched and worn, but it had never failed him. Tomorrow, he would discover if old weapons could face new enemies. The first Zephyrian ships appeared at the edge of the system as darkness fell. Their hulls gleamed with advanced alloys, and their engines bent space itself to achieve faster-than-light travel. War Commander Thelvis sat in the flagship's command center, reviewing Vextar's report. Primitive kinetic weapons, Thelvis read aloud. Chemical explosives, combustion engines. This will be the easiest conquest in our history. The invasion fleet moved toward New Dakota. In a few hours, they would demand humanity's surrender. If the humans refused, the Zephyrians would demonstrate their superior technology by destroying a few cities. After that, resistance would be pointless. But Thelvis had made one critical error. He assumed that advanced meant better. He had never fought an enemy that used simple, reliable weapons designed for one purpose: to kill efficiently and keep working, no matter what happened. The stage was set for a battle that would change both species forever. The alarm bells rang across New Dakota colony at dawn. Admiral Jake Morrison rushed to the command center as reports flooded in from across human space. Alien ships had appeared in 7-star systems, all at the same time. "They're huge, Captain," Lisa Carter said, pointing to the main screen. The image showed a Zephyrian battleship hanging in space above the colony. It was 3 times larger than any human warship, covered in smooth metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Jake had seen many enemy ships in his career, but nothing like this. The alien vessel looked like it had been grown rather than built. Strange energy patterns danced across its hull, and weapons that defied description pointed toward the planet. A message came through on all communication channels. The voice spoke perfect English, but with an odd musical quality that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. "Humans of New Dakota colony," the voice said. "I am War Commander Thelvis of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration into our civilization. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Resistance will result in pacification." Jake grabbed the microphone. "This is Admiral Morrison, commanding officer of New Dakota Defense Forces. We don't know who you are, but this is human territory. Leave now, or we'll defend ourselves." Laughter came through the speakers. It sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Admiral Morrison, we have studied your primitive weapons. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. We offer you this chance to surrender because we prefer not to damage useful workers." The transmission ended. Jake looked around the room at his officers. Everyone was thinking the same thing. They were completely outmatched, but none of them suggested giving up. "Sir," Lisa Carter said quietly, "their ship is scanning us. I'm reading energy levels off the charts. Whatever weapons they have, they're nothing like ours." Colonel Amy Davis arrived from the Ground Forces Base. She commanded 5,000 soldiers, all equipped with rifles, machine guns, and artillery pieces that used gunpowder and metal shells. Compared to the alien ship in orbit, her weapons seemed like toys. "What are our options?" Amy asked. Jake studied the tactical display. The colony had laser defense platforms around the major cities, designed to shoot down missiles and enemy aircraft. They also had particle beam generators that could, in theory, damage spacecraft. But looking at the alien ship, he doubted any of it would work. "We'll start with the energy weapons," Jake decided. "If they don't work, we fall back to the old. Equipment. Dr. Eric Stone, the colony's chief scientist, had been quiet during the briefing. Now he spoke up. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the energy readings from their ship. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's completely different from ours. They seem to use some kind of phase shift technology." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure yet, but I recommend we prepare all our defensive systems, not just the modern ones." 12 hours later, the Zephyrians began their attack. It started with a demonstration. War Commander Felvis wanted to show the humans how hopeless resistance would. A beam of purple light shot down from the alien ship. It hit the laser defense platform, protecting the capital city of New Hope. The platform simply disappeared, as if it had never existed. Not destroyed, erased. The energy beam passed through the metal and electronics like they were made of air. Jake watched in horror from the command bunker. "Fire all batteries. Everything we have." The colony's remaining laser platforms opened. Fire. Brilliant red beams shot up toward the Zephyrian ship. They struck the hull and simply vanished, absorbed by shields that shimmered like soap bubbles. The alien vessel didn't even slow down. Particle beam generators added their power too. The attack. Streams of charged particles that could melt through steel hit the enemy ship. The beams passed through the shields and struck the hull, but they did no damage at all. The alien metal seemed to absorb the energy and grow brighter. "Nothing's working," Lisa Carter reported. "Our most powerful weapons aren't even scratching them." The Zephyrian ship moved closer to the planet. More purple beams lanced down, erasing defense platforms one by one. Then the real attack began. Smaller alien craft detached from the mothership and dove toward the surface. Colonel Amy Davis watched the enemy landing craft approach her positions. They looked like silver teardrops, moving without any visible engines. Her soldiers were dug in around the city, with machine guns and mortar. "Ready. Let them come close," Amy ordered over the radio. "Save ammunition until you can't miss." The first alien soldiers stepped out of their craft. They were tall and thin, with forearms and metallic skin that reflected light like mirrors. Each one carried a weapon that looked like a crystal rod. Energy shields surrounded their bodies. Glowing faintly blue, Lieutenant Ben Parker commanded an artillery battery on the city's outskirts. His guns were old-fashioned cannons that fired explosive shells. When he saw the aliens advancing, he gave the order to fire. All guns high explosive. Rounds, fire for effect. 6 artillery pieces roared at once. Heavy shells arced through the air and exploded among the alien troops. Smoke and fire filled the landing zone. When it cleared, the aliens were still standing. Their energy shields had protected them completely. The Zephyrian soldiers raised their crystal weapons. Beams of pure energy shot out, cutting through concrete walls like paper. Human soldiers with laser rifles fired back, but their shots passed through the alien shields without effect. War Commander Felvis watched the battle from his command center. Everything was going exactly as predicted. Human energy weapons were useless against Zephyrian technology. Their projectile weapons were too primitive to consider. This would be over in hours. But in a basement beneath the city, Dr. Eric Stone was making a discovery that would change everything. He had captured pieces of debris from a damaged alien landing craft. Under his microscope, he saw something impossible. The alien metal was covered in tiny holes. Perfect round holes, exactly the right size for bullets. "That's impossible," he whispered to himself. Then he realized what it meant. The alien shields blocked energy, but they let solid matter pass through. Their armor was designed to stop energy. Weapons, not bullets. Dr. Stone grabbed his radio. "Admiral Morrison, I've found something important. The aliens' defenses have a weakness. Their shields don't stop physical projectiles." Jake Morrison was watching his modern weapons fail against the alien invaders. His laser platforms were gone. His particle beams were useless. Everything that made humans feel advanced and civilized wasn't working. But in the armory beneath his command center, thousands of old-fashioned rifles waited. Weapons that his grandfather might have used. Simple, reliable, and designed to fire. Chunks of metal at high speed. Maybe it was time to see if old weapons could teach new enemies a lesson. Dr. Eric Stone ran through the underground tunnels carrying his discovery. Behind him, the sounds of battle echoed through the concrete corridors. Human laser weapons fired uselessly at alien invaders, while energy beams carved through defensive positions. Admiral Jake Morrison was in the emergency command bunker when Dr. Stone burst through the door. The scientist was out of breath and covered in dust from the bombing above. "Admiral," Dr. Stone gasped. "They're shields. They only stop energy. Bullets will go right through." Jake stared at him. "Are you sure? I tested it myself. Look at this." Dr. Stone held up a piece of alien metal. It was covered in small holes. "These are bullet impacts. Their armor is designed to absorb energy weapons, but solid projectiles punch right through." Captain Lisa Carter looked up from her console. "Sir, we're losing the battle. All our modern weapons are useless. The aliens are advancing on 3 fronts. Jake made a decision that would save his colony. Order all units to fall back to the old defensive positions. Break out the kinetic weapons, rifles, machine guns, artillery shells, everything that fires bullets." "Sir?" Lisa looked confused. "Those weapons are 50 years old. Maybe that's exactly what we need." Colonel Amy Davis received the retreat order while watching her soldiers fall back from the alien advance. Her laser-equipped troops were being slaughtered by enemies they couldn't hurt. The aliens' energy shields stopped every shot. "All units, fall back to the old fort," Amy commanded. "Break out the kinetic weapons." The old fort had been built when New Dakota was first settled. Its walls were thick concrete, designed to stop bullets and shells. In the armory, thousands of rifles waited in storage. Simple weapons that fired metal bullets using gunpowder. Every soldier knew how to use them, but nobody had expected to need them. Sergeant Claire Johnson was one of the colony's best snipers. She had been using a laser rifle that could hit targets from 2 miles away. Now she picked up an old rifle that used bullets. It was heavier, louder, and less accurate. But if Dr. Stone was right, it might actually work. "This feels weird," her spotter said, loading bullets into his own rifle. "Like we're going backwards in time. Sometimes old ways are better," Claire replied. She had learned to shoot on weapons like this. Her father had taught her that bullets never ran out of power and worked in any weather. Captain Roy Mitchell commanded the colony's tank battalion. His modern tanks had energy shields and laser cannons. They were fast, quiet, and deadly against human enemies. But the alien weapons passed right through their shields, and their lasers couldn't hurt the invaders. Roy looked at the old tanks in the reserve garage. They were ancient machines, built like moving fortresses. Their armor was simple steel, inches thick. Their weapons were cannons that fired explosive shells. They burned fuel instead of using fusion engines, and they made noise like thunder. "Get those old tanks running," Roy ordered his mechanics. "Load them with high explosive rounds." Major Steve Collins ran the engineering course. His job was to keep the colony's advanced systems working. But now he was loading artillery pieces that his great-grandfather might have used. Big guns that threw heavy shells across long distances. "These things are so simple," one of his men said, checking the cannon's firing mechanism. "Point, load, shoot. Simple works," Steve replied. These guns were firing before computers were invented. They'll fire long after computers break down. The alien advance continued. War Commander Thelvas was pleased with the progress. Human resistance was crumbling as their energy weapons proved useless. Soon, the conquest would be complete, but tech analyst Kesmer was monitoring human communications. He heard strange orders being given. Humans were retreating to old positions and requesting kinetic weapons. Kesmer didn't understand what this meant. Kinetic weapons were primitive technology that no advanced species used. War Commander, Kesmer reported, the humans are changing their tactics. They are abandoning their energy weapons. Thelvas laughed. Good. Perhaps they are finally ready to surrender. The first test came when a squad of alien soldiers approached the old fort. They had been advancing easily, their shields stopping. All human weapons. Sergeant Claire Johnson watched them through her rifle scope. They were 400 yards away, an easy shot with a bullet. Claire aimed at the lead alien's center mass. She took a deep breath, let half of it out, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder with a loud bang. A bullet traveled across the distance at 2,000 feet per second. The alien soldier staggered and fell. The bullet had passed through his energy shield like it wasn't there, punched through his armor, and dropped him instantly. The other alien stopped in confusion. Target down, Claire reported calmly. The shields don't stop bullets. Word spread quickly through the human forces. Soldiers who had been retreating in defeat suddenly had hope. They grabbed rifles, machine guns, and pistols. Weapons they had trained with, but never expected to use in real combat. The aliens advanced on the fort. 20 soldiers with energy, shields and crystal weapons. They had defeated human forces all day without taking a single casualty. But as they approached the concrete walls, rifles appeared in the windows. 50 human soldiers opened fire at once. Bullets flew through the air, passing through alien shields like they were made of air. Energy protection that could stop laser. Beams was useless against chunks of metal moving at high speed. Aliens fell. Their shields flickered and died. Their advanced armor, designed to absorb energy, was pierced by simple bullets. In 30 seconds, the entire squad was down. Captain Roy Mitchell watched this victory from his tank. Then he gave his own order. All tanks advance, load high explosive shells. 6 old tanks rumbled out of the fort. They were loud, smoky, and primitive, but their cannons fired shells that weighed 50 pounds each. When those shells hit alien positions, the explosions were devastating. The aliens had never faced weapons like this. Their shields let the shells pass through, then the explosives went off inside their defensive positions. Metal fragments tore through armor designed for energy attacks. Tech analyst Kesmer watched his forces die and couldn't understand what was happening. Human weapons were primitive. They should be useless against Zephyrian technology. But soldiers were falling and vehicles were exploding. He ran scans on the human weapons. Simple chemical reactions. Metal projectiles. Crude explosives. Technology that was thousands of years old. But it was working where advanced energy weapons had failed. War Commander, Kesmer called urgently. Something is wrong. Our shields are not stopping their attacks. Thelvas looked at the battlefield reports. Impossible. Human weapons were primitive. How could bullets defeat Zephyrian shields? Major Steve Collins had moved his artillery into position. 6 large cannons pointed toward the alien landing zone. Each gun was loaded with a shell that contained 50 pounds of high explosive. Fire mission, Steve called over the radio. High explosive, area target. Fire for effect. The cannons roared. Heavy shells arced through the sky and exploded among the alien forces. The blasts tore through shields and armor that had stopped every energy weapon on the planet. For the first time in 1,000 years, Zephyrian soldiers began to retreat. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the battle turn. His modern weapons had failed completely, but rifles and cannons that his ancestors had used were winning the fight. Sometimes, he realized, simple was better than sophisticated. The real war was just beginning. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center, watching reports flood in from across human space. The discovery on New Dakota had spread to every human colony within hours. Kinetic weapons worked against the aliens. Bullets and shells could punch through their shields like they were made of air. "Sir," Captain Lisa Carter said, "we're getting messages from 12 colonies. They're all requesting ammunition for old weapons. Bullets, artillery shells, even crossbow bolts." Jake smiled grimly. "Send them everything we have, and get me a line to Earth Command." The conversation with Earth changed everything. General Kyle Brooks was commanding the Defense of Humanity's home system when Jake's message arrived. The aliens had 3 massive fleets approaching Earth, confident that human energy weapons couldn't touch them. "You're telling me that bullets work?" Kyle asked over the subspace radio. "Better than work," Jake replied. "They go through alien shields like the shields aren't there. Their armor is designed for energy weapons. Against bullets, they might as well be naked." Within hours, every human military base was opening old storage facilities. Weapons that had been mothballed for decades were brought back into service. Rifles from the last colonial war, machine guns from the settlement period, artillery pieces that museums had wanted to display. Captain Tony Roberts commanded a squadron of bomber aircraft on the colony world of New Texas. His planes carried laser-guided missiles and particle beam weapons. They were fast, stealthy, and deadly against human enemies. But they were useless against the Zephyrian invasion fleet hanging over his planet. All pilots, Tony announced over the radio, were switching to old ordnance. Iron bombs and chemical. Explosives. If it's got gunpowder in it, we're loading it. His mechanics worked frantically to retrofit the bombers. Out came the sophisticated guided weapons. In went simple bombs filled with high explosive. No computers, no guidance systems. Just metal cases packed with chemicals designed to explode. "This is like flying in the old days," Tony's wingman said. "We'll have to aim these things manually." "Good thing we trained on the old systems," Tony replied. Every pilot learned basic bombing techniques, even in an age of guided weapons. Now those ancient skills were the most important thing they knew. The Zephyrian fleet orbiting New Texas was commanded by Sub-Commander Veltar. He had watched human aircraft attack his ships all morning. Their energy weapons bounced off Zephyrian shields without effect. He was getting bored. Then Captain Tony Roberts led his squadron of bombers toward the alien fleet. The old aircraft were loud and slow compared to modern fighters. They flew in straight lines, making no effort to hide. Veltar wondered why humans were wasting more lives on useless attacks. The bombers released their loads directly over the Zephyrian ships. Simple iron bombs fell through space, guided only by gravity. They passed through the energy shields like stones dropping through water. Then they hit the hulls and exploded. Veltar felt his flagship shake as explosions tore through the armor. Impossible. Human weapons were primitive. They couldn't damage Zephyrian technology. But alarms were screaming, and damage reports were flooding in. "Shields are useless," his engineer reported. "Their weapons are passing right through." More bombers attacked. Each one dropped tons of simple explosives onto the alien fleet. Ships that had seemed invincible were now burning and breaking apart. Veltar gave the order to retreat, not understanding how primitive bombs could defeat advanced technology. Admiral Jake Morrison received reports of victories across human space. Old weapons were working everywhere. But he knew the real test was coming. The main Zephyrian fleet was moving toward Earth. If humanity was going to survive, they needed to win that battle. "Lisa," Jake said to his aide, "get me every ship with kinetic weapons. Railguns, missile tubes, even the old chemical rockets. We're going to Earth." The human fleet that assembled was strange to see. Modern warships flew alongside ancient vessels, pulled out of museums. Ships with laser batteries flew next to others armed with cannons that fired metal shells. Some vessels had been converted to carry nothing but kinetic weapons. Commander Vextar watched this fleet approach and felt confused. He had started this war by reporting that humans used primitive weapons. Now those same weapons were destroying Zephyrian forces across the galaxy. How had his assessment been so wrong? The space battle began when the human fleet engaged the aliens near Earth's moon. Modern human ships fired their railguns, weapons that used electromagnetic force to throw metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The aliens' energy shields might as well have been made of paper. Old human ships joined the fight. Vessels that had fought in colonial wars decades ago. Their weapons were simple cannons that fired explosive shells in space. Ancient technology. That worked perfectly against enemies who had forgotten how to defend against it. Colonel Amy Davis led the ground assault on the moon base that the Zephyrians had captured. Her soldiers carried rifles and machine guns. They wore simple body armor and moved in formations that generals had used for centuries. Against an enemy with energy weapons, it should have been suicide. But the aliens couldn't understand what they were facing. Their weapons were designed to fight other advanced species. Energy shields, molecular disruptors, and plasma beams. They had no experience fighting soldiers who charged across open ground firing bullets. Amy's troops overran the alien positions in 4 hours. Simple tactics, basic weapons, and human determination defeated technology that was thousands of years more advanced. War Commander Thelvas commanded the main Zephyrian fleet from his flagship above Earth. He watched his forces retreat from battle. After battle, ships were exploding. Ground forces were being defeated. His invasion was falling apart. How are they doing this? He demanded. Their weapons are primitive. Tech analyst Kesmer had been studying human weapons for days. Finally, he understood. War Commander, we made an error in our assessment. We assumed that advanced technology was always better. But these humans have kept their old weapons for practical reasons. Explain. Our shields stop energy attacks because that's what we expected to face. No advanced species uses kinetic weapons. But humans never fully abandon them. When energy weapons fail, they fall back on methods that always work. Thelvas stared at the tactical display. Half his fleet was destroyed or retreating. Ground forces were surrendering across 3 star systems. All because of weapons that his people had discarded millennia ago. The battle for Earth lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrian invasion fleet was broken. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were now drifting wrecks. The survivors were fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. Admiral Jake Morrison accepted the surrender of the remaining alien forces. In the end, humanity had won not because their technology was better, but because they had kept the old ways alive alongside the new ones. Why didn't you just surrender? Jake asked Thelvas during the negotiations. You must have known we could fight back. The alien commander's 4 eyes focused on the human admiral. We thought your weapons were antiques. We never imagined that. Old could be better than new. Jake smiled. Sometimes the old ways work best. We just have to be smart enough to remember them. The war was won, but the cost had been enormous. Entire colonies had been damaged. Thousands of humans had died. But they had learned something important. Progress wasn't just about building better weapons. Sometimes it was about keeping the ones that worked. General Kyle Brooks stood on the bridge of the battleship New Freedom, watching the planet Kepler 442b grow larger on the main screen. This world was the heart of Zephyrian power in this region of space. If they could take it, the alien empire would have no choice but to retreat from human territory forever. Sir, Lieutenant Colonel Grace Taylor reported, orbital scans show heavy defenses. They have energy shields covering the entire planet and at least 50 defense platforms in space. Kyle nodded. 3 weeks ago, those defenses would have been impossible to break. Zephyrian energy shields could stop any weapon humans had built. But now, everything had changed. The aliens' greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. What about kinetic weapons? Kyle asked. Grace smiled. Every ship in the fleet is loaded with them, sir. Railgun slugs, missile warheads, and old-fashioned artillery shells. If it throws metal, we've got it. The human fleet had assembled from across the galaxy. Ships from every colony carrying every kinetic weapon they could find. Modern vessels with railguns flew alongside ancient freighters converted to carry missile tubes. Even civilian ships had been armed with simple cannons. Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the New Dakota Task Force from his flagship. He had started this war watching his modern weapons fail against alien technology. Now he was leading an assault force armed with weapons his grandfather would recognize. All ships, Jake announced over the fleet communication system. Remember what we learned. Their shields don't stop bullets. Their armor can't handle explosions. We're going to show them what human weapons can really do. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Supreme Commander Yelthar prepared his defenses. This planet was the command center for 12 star systems. It held the regional government, the main military academies, and the most advanced weapons factories in the Empire. The humans are coming with their primitive weapons, Yelthar told his staff. They may have won some battles through trickery, but this world has defenses they cannot break. Our shields will hold. But Major Dan Walsh was already proving him wrong. The human Special Forces commander had landed on the planet's dark side with 50 soldiers. They carried simple weapons, rifles, grenades, and plastic explosives. Nothing that alien sensors would consider dangerous. Dan's team moved through the underground tunnels beneath the planetary capital. The Zephyrians had built these tunnels to protect against energy weapons, but they offered no protection against men with guns who knew how to use them. Remember, Dan whispered to his team, their personal shields won't stop bullets. Their armor is designed for energy attacks. Aim for center mass and keep firing until they go down. The Special Forces team reached the Planetary Defense Control Center. Zephyrian guards stood at every entrance, protected by energy shields and carrying crystal weapons that could cut through steel. They had never been defeated by any ground force, and soldiers opened fire from 3 directions at once. Bullets tore through energy shields like they were made of light. The guards fell before they could return fire. In 60 seconds, the most secure facility on the planet was in human hands. Planetary shields are down, Dan reported. Defense platforms are offline. The target is open. Above the planet, the space battle began. Zephyrian defense platforms fired energy beams at the human fleet. The beams were powerful enough to vaporize asteroids, but they couldn't penetrate human armor designed to stop physical impacts. The human ships returned fire with everything they had. Railgun slugs traveling at a significant fraction of light. Speed punched through alien shields and tore the defense platforms apart. Missiles loaded with chemical explosives passed through energy barriers and exploded against hulls that had never been designed to resist such attacks. Tony Roberts led the bomber attack on the planet's surface. His squadron had been retrofitted with the oldest weapons in human inventory, iron bombs filled with simple explosives. No guidance systems, no advanced targeting. Just metal cases designed to fall and explode. Target the command centers, Tony ordered his pilots. Remember, we have to aim these manually. Make every bomb count. The bombers dove through the planet's atmosphere, while Zephyrian fighters tried to intercept them. The alien aircraft fired, energy beams that passed harmlessly through human armor. But when the human gunners returned fire with machine guns that shot bullets, the advanced alien fighters fell like leaves. Tony's bombs fell on the planetary capital. Each explosion tore through defenses that had been built to withstand energy attacks. Buildings designed to absorb. Laser fire crumbled under the impact of simple chemical explosives. Supreme Commander Yelthar watched his world burn from his command bunker deep underground. His most advanced defenses were useless. His energy shields couldn't stop human weapons. His armor couldn't resist human explosives. How is this possible? He demanded. We are thousands of years more advanced than these creatures. His science advisor, a being called Nex Volum, had been studying the battle reports. Supreme Commander, I believe we made a fundamental error. We evolved past kinetic weapons so long ago that we forgot how to defend against them. These humans never abandoned the old ways. You're saying they're defeating us with museum pieces? Not museum pieces, sir. Working weapons. Simple, reliable, and effective against enemies who never expected to face them. Lieutenant Colonel Grace Taylor coordinated the orbital bombardment from the flagship. Human ships surrounded the planet, firing kinetic weapons at every military target they could identify. Railgun slugs struck with the force of nuclear weapons. Chemical explosives destroyed installations that energy beams couldn't touch. Sir, Grace reported to General Kyle Brooks, resistance is collapsing. Their ground forces are surrendering in 3 major cities. The planetary government is requesting terms. Kyle looked at the tactical display. In 12 hours, human forces had broken defenses that should have held for months. Simple weapons had defeated technology that was millennia more advanced. Colonel Amy Davis led the final assault on the planetary command center. Her soldiers moved through streets filled with the wreckage of alien vehicles. Zephyrian troops who had never lost a battle were laying down their crystal weapons and raising their 4 arms in surrender. It's over, Amy radioed to the fleet. The planet is ours. Major Dan Walsh found Supreme Commander Yelthar in his underground bunker. The alien leader sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed the complete collapse of his defenses. I don't understand, Yelthar said when Dan entered with his rifle. Your weapons are primitive. How did you defeat us? Dan lowered his weapon. The battle was won. Maybe that's the problem. You thought primitive meant weak. But sometimes old weapons work better than new ones. We abandoned kinetic weapons 10,000 years ago. We thought energy attacks were the future of warfare. Energy weapons are great, Dan replied. But they're not the only answer. We kept the old weapons because they work. When your fancy shields failed, we had something to fall back on. Supreme Commander Yelthar formally surrendered the planet 6 hours later. The ceremony took place in the ruined command center with human soldiers standing guard. Their rifles and machine guns looked ancient compared to the high-tech alien equipment scattered around the room. General Kyle Brooks accepted the surrender. This war is over, he announced. Zephyrian forces will withdraw from all human territory. You will not return. We will not, Yelthar agreed. We have learned that technological advancement does not always mean military superiority. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet retreat from the system. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were now fleeing from humans armed with weapons that were thousands of years old. Sir, Captain Lisa Carter said, do you think they'll come back? Jake shook his head. Not anytime soon. They thought our weapons were antiques. Now they know that sometimes antiques work better than the latest technology. The war had lasted only 4 weeks, but it changed both species forever. The Zephyrians learned that progress wasn't just about building more advanced weapons. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Humanity learned something too. They had won not because they were more advanced, but because they had kept their traditional weapons alongside their modern ones. When energy attacks failed, bullets still worked. When computers broke down, simple machines still functioned out in the end. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They assumed that newer was always better. They forgot that sometimes the most effective weapon is the one that works when everything else fails. The humans never forgot that lesson. From that day forward, every human ship carried both energy weapons and kinetic ones. Every soldier trained with both laser rifles and bullet guns, because they had learned that the key to survival wasn't just advancing forward, it was remembering where you came from.